afternoon, everyone. It's your host, Elijah Norris Holiday.
And I'm your host, Christian McClary.
Thank you for joining another episode of the ADOS Podcast. Quick reminder that you all can subscribe to our YouTube channel at the ADOS Podcast. We're on Instagram at the ADOS Podcast. We're on Facebook at, you guessed it, the ADOS Podcast. And we're streaming on various other platforms. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Music. There's just not a place that you can't reach us. So that's not an excuse for you all not to be informed about what we're doing at the ADOS Podcast. We're everywhere. And Christian has an announcement that he wants to make. He wants to make us aware of something before we get into our special guest that we have with us.
Yes. So over the last couple days, we've all heard some bad, unfortunate news about a young brother who ran for mayor about 2 years ago in Charlotte, North Carolina. His name is Joel Odom, and he was found dead a couple of days ago. Young brother, he really gave me Martin Luther King vibes during his campaign. The reason he ran at the age of 20 is because he wanted to elevate the younger community and get them more involved in politics. So if he can do it and set a foundation, you can too. I myself been in that situation, and that's one of the number one things that people face when they're going into these political seats. Could I see my family? What is the danger? What is the outcome? So our heart goes out to the family of Joel Odom and to the city of Charlotte.
It's unfortunate that we're still going through these things that, we were going through 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, when we have black people, black folks who are trying to rise through the ranks of the political space. Unfortunate things seems to always happen to them. And, you all know the Judah and the Black Messiah. That movie came out a couple weeks ago. And I knew about, Fred Hampton, Chairman Fred Hampton, before that movie. My grandparents did a very great job of teaching me about my history, about the black leadership that we had and that we currently have. So I knew about him. I knew about that brother. And we're from Chicago. We're from the South Side. So, he's like a hero for us. And it's just so sad that whenever we have black leaders that try to, get their peoples all on one agenda, one platform, try to align the black community together, they get assassinated or they die, unfortunately. And I don't know the details behind the young brother's passing. I hope there was no foul play. But man, it's so sad that we can never make those advances, because it's like every time we get to that point, something happens to our leadership. And it's just sad. It's something that I always ruminate over all the time. And man, it's kind of hard to be optimistic when we know the reality when we have black leadership, or at least people who are trying to become city council members, mayors, trying to align their community together. What happens to them?
Yeah, and he was the youngest candidate to run for mayor in that city ever. And, it is scary going in at such a young age, not knowing what to expect. And I was reading an article how he built a relationship with one of the candidates that he ran against. She didn't win as well, but, they formed a bond, and she was really hurt by it as well, although they ran against each other. So once again, our hearts goes out to the family and to Joel Odom and the city of Charlotte.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We do have a special guest with us today. I'll let Corissa introduce herself. Hi, Corissa.
Guys, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Of course. Do you want to just introduce who you are, where you're from for our audience?
Awesome. My name is Corissa. I am Corissa Sutton. I am the CEO and founder of the Powerhouse Mom, which is a for-profit organization designed to provide coaching and solutions to single moms. I am also a realtor here in Minneapolis, but most recently I was named a housing chair for Minneapolis NAACP.
Oh, wow. How long have you had your company? I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that you're a business owner.
Yes. I've had my company now. This is my second year.
Awesome. And how has all that been going right now?
In the pandemic, it's been interesting trying to pivot. But I'm still, doing this the best I can with it. So.
Absolutely. Wow. I didn't know you're a business owner. I'm a business owner as well. So I love to talk with folks
Oh,
who,
nice.
who own businesses and are doing great work in the community. So I learned something new about you that I didn't know. I did know that you're the sitting chairperson for the housing committee on the NAACP. Can you tell our audience a little bit more about that role?
All right. So with that role, I just got appointed to that a couple months ago. And with that, we will be studying housing conditions in the local community, and we'll be receiving complaints. I'm pretty much going to be over this committee, just looking to, look into discrimination and things like that within the.
Perfect. And I'm going to say congratulations on that role. It's important. And you're not just going to speed past one thing that I caught real estate. Like, are you kidding me?
Yes.
For one, I think that is a really good business to be in. Because you become so knowledgeable of everything that's happening around you, and better yet, for your community. So I love that you're also doing real estate and you're doing housing committee for the NAACP. And congratulations.
Thank you. So with that, I decided to get into real estate because when I bought my first house, I bought it as a rent to own. And I didn't understand the contract. I didn't understand the language. And I became basically a victim to wolves, in sheep's clothing. And part of that was wanting to be able to understand the language for myself and for others, but then also, my history with housing and wanting to make a difference in housing. I wanted to be able to represent our community as well in that. So being able to negotiate, understand the language, and across the board, be able to help with the transaction. That's why I decided to kind of push myself into that role so that I wouldn't become victim. And then I can also be a part of roles when there's other issues.
Wow. I love the fact that you took an unfortunate situation and you admitted that you didn't know enough about it when you got involved into it, but made a goal for yourself to learn the language, right, within these contracts. And also now you're empowering other people. At least I'm assuming that you're empowering other people to become knowledgeable about real estate and these contracts and these leasing agreements that they get themselves involved in, and how these things can have an impact on them negatively, or if you know what you're doing, positively, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It goes back to kind of that Black wealth building, and it goes back to what we're used to seeing as well, right? In our community, are we really homeowners? Are our parents homeowners? Have we seen this? Have we really seen these contracts? So that was a lot of why I wanted to get involved with it. And also, you're right, empower myself, but also empower others to be able to do the same. So sure, you can come into a transaction, you're a first-time home buyer, and you don't understand the language, but you can trust that the person working for you understands the language, will make sure that you're completely taken care of, and that we have your back in that aspect.
And that's amazing you brought that up, because last week Elijah and I were talking about reparations. And I was like, just hearing you speak about it, like I was like, the perspective you said is a little bit about what we were getting into our last segment. And we were just talking about the building of the Black wealth, the educating ourselves in order to educate for others. Because if we didn't know about ourselves, it was really hard for us to know about others or how to work with others. So thank you for highlighting that. Now, I have a question for you. How did you get involved with the NAACP?
Sure. So I got involved with the NAACP during the George Floyd uprisings and protests. I grew up Southside Minneapolis. I grew up in that neighborhood, literally blocks away from where he was murdered. And during the time, Leslie Redmond was the president, and she was running this Don't Complain, Activate campaign. And I heard her speak, and I'm like, I can't be one of those people that just sits quietly and doesn't do a thing. So instantly, I was so appalled and so moved and so distraught by what was happening in my neighborhood that I just got up, I activated, and I was pretty much donating my time wherever I could. I was out protesting. I was out collecting donations, delivering donations. I was doing some work with the FBI. I was doing some work with canvassing the neighborhoods. Sorry about that. And I just activated. I was so moved by George's murder in my neighborhood. And it was just that one thing that pushed me to make a difference and just get up. So then I eventually connected with Leslie, and I connected with Angela, and I've been full throttle ever since. I joined a political action committee, and I began doing work across the board all summer, preparing for elections. I can go on and on.
I'm inspired because, as you mentioned, you got involved, you got activated during the George Floyd murder, but you didn't stop, right? Because I know a lot of people that weren't involved prior to it, and they saw that video, they felt the outrage of the community, and they wanted to spring into action, but that action only lasted for 2 weeks. It lasted for a month or 2 months. I can tell now that, once you experience that, not only did you get involved, but you stayed involved. And you were looking for more opportunities to get involved. And, I know you're the type of person that probably got other people in your circle to get involved and inspired them as well. That's the key. It's one thing to get activated. It's another thing to stay activated. And not to go back to that place of complacency, which we see all the time, right? We got the daytime activists, the nighttime activists, or we got the people who've made this a part of their life. And not everyone can do it 24/7. But it needs to be a part of your life to the point where I'm putting in a couple hours a week just to help my community out. That's something I think everyone can agree to do, right? A couple hours a week is what all I think I'm asking for, just to try to get involved and stay connected in some way. So that's key right there.
Absolutely. Well, the thing is, it wasn't over, right? The fight isn't over. So once you get activated, you have to stay consistent and diligent. We're still in a fight. We're still in a battle. There's still so much work to be done. So for me, coming out and protesting and just doing something for the moment because it was hot, I wasn't on the bandwagon for that. I was on the bandwagon for change. I have a son. He's 6 years old. And until I can feel like he's safe in the streets and that he's safe to be a Black male in Minneapolis, the work wasn't over.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that being said, and this is kind of a segue into my next question I'm going to have for you, but it's hard when we as Black people have situations that we have to fight for, and then more situations arise during us still fighting for the situation prior. So I don't know if that made sense to a lot of people, but it's like, as we continue with this organizing, this work, the mediation, and the fight for equity, we are forced into other situations when we're still fighting for another situation. So now all of these different issues that we have as a community, it becomes very hard to navigate. And then we have to divide and focus on multiple different areas to get what we would call the reparations for our community, basically the respect for our community and the resources. So I wanted to thank you for the work that you're doing and saying, yeah, I want to get involved. And no matter how many other issues come, one such as housing, you're like, I'm going to be there to make sure that we have the housing knowledge to put into this community, and particularly into the Black people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, if you're not familiar, Minneapolis has a long history of racism in our deeds and contracts, right? Mm-hmm. There was that time when Blacks weren't allowed to own, and that preventative measure still kind of reflects us now when you see, how many homeowners we have versus renters. And then especially with this eviction moratorium, you're seeing how many people are affected by that. So absolutely, for me to step in at this point and say, we need to make a difference. We need to use our knowledge and our understanding to make a difference. I'm definitely pushing with my position to put more Black folks into home ownership and understanding Black wealth. So, we can kind of make a difference with that going forward.
The city of Minneapolis, and you're right, we have a huge amount of our population residents that live in Minneapolis who are renters. And a large percentage of those folks are people of color, Black folks who are renters. And especially in Ward 5, and in Ward 4, right, which is the community's north side in Minneapolis. There's a lot of folks who are renting over there. It's a huge problem that we have. And we know about the historical discriminations with the banks, not giving Black folks loans. And if they do give them a loan, the interest rates are through the roof, so they'll never be able to pay off that home. And 10 years later, the bank comes and takes the home back because they can't make the payments on it, right? So we know that history. What specifically is the NAACP doing, you with your committee, to kind of fight and combat some of those historical things, right? Specifically to address the discrimination in home mortgage loans in the community, which I know is a huge problem.
Absolutely. And it's not a one hit or miss thing either, right? So yesterday we had a meeting with Angela Connolly, and we began the discussion. You know, she's doing a lot of work for the community, but we began the discussion that we would like to be at the table as well. About housing from both sides of the spectrum, from all the way from homelessness to home ownership. So we want to be able to support or be involved across the board when it comes to the Black community. So whether you're unhoused or you're in home ownership, we're looking to have that conversation across the board, regardless with that. And then also we're doing an intake process where if a community feels that they're being discriminated against, or they have an issue that in their housing that might be civil or something that they feel NAACP should be involved in, we're doing an intake process where we will investigate, research, and respond to those kinds of inquiries.
Excellent. I think a lot of people believe once you get your house, you no longer need support. I don't think that's true. There's a lot of people who still need support even once they acquire a home, right? When they become a homeowner, and specifically educating themselves about refinancing options and how this pandemic has really made a lot of people some money or saved a lot of people some money. I know my grandparents, my parents are homeowners, my grandparents are homeowners. Pretty much everyone in my immediate family owns their home. And once the pandemic hit, there was a lot of programs out there for them to refinance their homes and get lowest interest rates. A lot of folks didn't know about that, right? Mm-hmm. And that benefits people, but it doesn't necessarily benefit the bank. Right. So I think just even having more programs and conversations on how we can support people even once they become homeowners, and even encourage them to get a second and a third property to really start building that generational wealth, and getting some of our Black folks to become renters in their properties, right? I mean, we need to start building that type of community where if we have people on the north side who own the homes, own the duplexes, they're the people who are going to be getting the renters, right? There's a lot of youth homelessness right now. How can we try to create a system, implement a system where we're supporting our youth and also building community generational wealth? I know we talk about it from an individual's perspective, but it's never really from this. How do we start building community generational wealth? That's how I want to start the conversation. I mean, it needs to happen. Everyone else is doing it.
Absolutely. And that's pretty much starting with that knowledge base. It's starting with having that programming where there's free access and people know where to go. That's the other thing too. We can have it out there, but also it's looking at familiar faces too, right? Who's doing the programming? How do you feel comfortable with that? So those are some of the things that we're looking at, partnering with a lot of organizations in the community to bring that about.
Yeah, in which those conversations need to happen. And, and I'm going to hit on another piece because I know Elijah was talking more of like the mortgage and home ownership, but you mentioned the unhousing and the homelessness, which is a huge part of the discrepancy. It's the knowledge, how much they know about housing, renting, applications, how to even file application fees and all these different things. So when I'm thinking about it, building a community, I'm thinking about a total of a lot of organizers who are for the Black community to build somewhat of a Black village. So that way we could start housing ourselves. We be our own bank. We be our own community where we say, look, if you ain't got it this month, good. We're going to help you find a job. We'll take care of your rent. When you got it next month, just give it to us next month. No stipulations. And when I ran for city council, one of my platforms was guaranteed base income, which I was inspired from the city of Stockton, and Stockton's in California. that city was actually going bankrupt at one point in time. And then they implemented this model, guaranteed based income, and they call it the SEED program, where a certain amount of families who are underneath the income median, they get like a untaxed supplemental stipend. They get income, somewhat of like the stimulus, where it's, it's nothing. It's just there. Mm-hmm. And it's not a lot of money, but $500 a month for X amount of families saves people. People were able to live affordably. The city of Stockton got recognition for saying, wow, like people here are loving the SEED program, and everyone is receiving it at some point in time. And because they're receiving that, a lot of their expenses go to medical bills, food for their homes, directly to their rent or mortgages or whatever the case may be. And I just picture, I'm like, we have to do more of that. We have to be inspired by cities like Stockton so we can implement this, because if they can do it and they were on the cusp of being bankrupt, communities with more money and different resources could do it, if not better.
Mm-hmm. And I do remember you bringing this up. I think you brought this up when we were on the show. When you were running for office, you brought it up. And I originally said I didn't agree with you or, with that particular stance. I liked some of the provisions that was included inside the SEED program. I had my skepticism of it. But I do acknowledge this. Human tendency is when you make more money, you typically do what? You spend more money. Mm-hmm. So if we're giving people more money, we almost can expect for folks to just go out and buy things, which is good for what? The community. It's good for the small businesses. It's good for the city, right? Because they have more people who have more funding to spend. That's what happens when you give people more money. And that's why you see people trying to push more stimuluses out there, because the economy is in trouble. If people don't have money, they can't spend, which means our businesses fail, which means guess what that does for our economic systems?
Yep.
Goes in a downward spiral, right? So how do we pump more money into these families, these households, into individuals, and get them to spend more money so the economy can go up? So I do agree with that, because I know human tendencies.
That's the business aspect of it, but I understand.
Man, well, once you become a business owner, and I try not to do this all the time, my mind is just always stuck in business. That's it. So everything that I look at is through a business lens, and sometimes it's negative, sometimes it's a positive for me. So I do understand the economic impact that can have. I don't know if we'll be able to replicate something like that in the city of Minneapolis, though.
You never know. We
can always try.
We can always try. I think that's a good segue to talk about what do you think the biggest issues are, not necessarily from your role as the NAACP Housing Committee Chair, but just you as a Black woman, business owner. You said you're a Southside native in Minneapolis. What do you think the biggest pressing issues are in our Black community? Because there's a lot of them, but I want to know specifically from you, what do you think the biggest issues are? You can give me 2 or 3.
Well, I know. And I really feel like right now that eviction moratorium is one of the biggest ones, especially because I do work with single mothers as well with my nonprofit or with my for-profit business. I'm seeing a lot of single mothers who are affected and worried and concerned and stressed and worried about how they're going to make it during this time. And for me, seeing that, those are 2 sides of the spectrum. Single mothers who need the support, they need assistance, and they're also dealing with this huge housing crisis. So those are kind of my 2 things that I stick to in community. I do definitely the single mothers, and then also with that eviction moratorium. I feel like that is a huge issue right now.
I got one more question. I want to turn it over to Christian too, because I know he has a couple more questions he wants to ask. So you brought up the rent moratorium and providing more support for single mothers who are renters. Are you currently, and I guess you can give me your perspective from you just as an individual, and then maybe offer your perspective from being the chair of the housing committee. Are you supporting the rent control policy that will set limitations on how much a landlord can charge a tenant?
So for me, Corissa Sutton, I would support that. Publicly, Minneapolis and NAACP, we haven't said which way we are with that. But I personally think that, this isn't a time for people to continue to raise rents, especially, the considering the climate right now of the way things are. So I definitely think I do agree with that.
And do you have any investment property right now? Do you have any renters?
I do not have investment property. I just started my business, so my personal business outside of selling real estate. I will also buy and sell and rent and flip properties as well. So I just got that started. But when I do, I absolutely will. But my perspective of it is, it's not, for me, starting my business is not about necessarily making money. I got my real estate license with purpose. I got my license, I got involved in the community to want to give back. So for me, yes, there is that, you will make an income on this, but I'm not looking to hurt my community any more than necessary, right? Just for greed or for money. So for me in that position, that's how I look at it.
You know what? I love that, Corissa. And I said, I'm a business owner as well. I have a pretty successful business. Actually, I do it full time, and I'm also a graduate student. And when I have conversations with people about being a business owner, they always assume that I'm in it just to make a lot of money. And that's not true. I understand the power of money. And I say this all the time on the 8 Hours podcast. Money is not the final destination. The final destination for me, personally, Elijah Norris Holiday, is liberation and freedom for my people. Now, in order to arrive at that terminus of liberation and freedom for my people, I need to have a vehicle, just like you need a vehicle to get to any destination, right? And money is that vehicle for me. And I understand that. I don't need to push my profit margins to the furthest extent possible, which is capitalism. I understand that I live in a capitalist society, but I don't have to succumb to the traditional aspects of what capitalism is. I can use money as my vehicle to get to freedom and liberation for my people. And I think you can relate to that a bit, right? We understand the significance of money, but that's not the end all be all. That's not our destination. It's a higher purpose. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, definitely. And I kind of want to backtrack a little bit to the homelessness and unhoused, because I kind of went on a tangent. I'm sorry, community. Sorry, Corissa. But I wanted to ask you, what is your definition of homelessness? Because I have one, and I want to know what Elijah's definition is as well. But from your expertise, your experience for someone who's in the real estate industry and doing the housing committee work, I just want to know what your definition of unhoused or homelessness is.
If I go really deep with you, which I'm feeling like I might want to do, I actually think that renting at some point is a version of homelessness, because you do not own the property. You have no rights in the property. And at any point, you can be removed from the property for whatever reason. So I would start there by saying that if you are a renter and you don't own your property, you are experiencing a version of homelessness, because of that security blanket is to be ripped from what's under you at any point.
That is so powerful, because for someone who is a renter, and I feel this way, I'm in a process, my fiance and I are looking to buy homes, because we're like, the money we're putting into the renting could go towards a mortgage. And then another thing Elijah and I talked about next week is, like, if you have the mortgage, and you mentioned it earlier too, like, if you have the mortgage, technically you're still not really the owner until you get that deed. And, it's just one of those things that's in place. My definition, I agree with yours too, but my definition is, like, if someone is couch surfing, if someone is staying with a partner, if someone is renting, by your definition, those are all different forms of homelessness. And when we're talking about reparations and building things and support systems for people who are homeless, we have to consider all of those different definitions of homelessness. And when we understand that, that's when we can actually get things done.
I agree with both of y'all's definition. I would say I would just take what you said and combine with what you said, and that'll be my definition of homelessness. I think a lot of people look at homelessness from just one aspect, one perspective. But like you were mentioning, Christian, it is a spectrum, right? And I have conversations with people all the time Like, dude, if you're sleeping on somebody's couch, regardless if you paying rent or not, you are still homeless, because the second that person comes home and your socks is on the floor and you left the pizza box on the table and you ain't throw it out, and I told you to take out that trash before I left and the trash ain't taken out, I can tell you to bounce. Get up out of my crib. Take your little funky 250 and leave. No, seriously. And that's a reality that they need to understand. Like, if you're on somebody's couch and you say, well, I pay rent, I pay $250.
Yeah,
you still homeless, bro.
You're still homeless.
I have this conversation with my friends so much. It's like, dude, that's your chick for now, but the second she don't like you no more, you gone. The second she find a dude at the grocery store that actually got a job doing what she wants to do, somebody who's a better candidate for marriage than you are, because, you know, I think that's as significant as a date, not to go off on a tangent, but you're dating someone to see if you want to marry them or not. Mm-hmm. And a lot of women know ahead of time who their husband gonna be. And right now, a lot of them dudes on their couch ain't gonna be their husband. So when they find their husband, when they go to church or when they go to the grocery store, that brother gonna be out, or that sister gonna be out when that man find his wife. Right. And that's the reality. And people don't think about that. Now you went from one bad situation to a worse situation because you don't got that couch to sleep on no more. Mm-hmm. Now you might be in your car, or now you might be at the shelter.
Yeah. So Minnesota gets cold. It gets cold here. I don't know if anybody knew this, but it gets cold here. It was cold.
Negative 20 a couple weeks ago, last week.
It was.
So the biggest thing for me is, how do we educate people so they understand that, right? That I don't have security because I got a roof over my head right now. Right. If I'm a renter, and I love that you mentioned that, Corissa. I haven't heard anyone put it that way before, that even if you are a renter, you still are subject to being homeless eventually. Right. That's not completely removed off the table because you signed a lease, because as soon as you violate a provision within that lease agreement, you could be kicked out. And now that's a unlawful detainer or mark on your not criminal history, on your credit. Rental history and your credit. Mm-hmm. And now it becomes 10 times harder for you to get your next place, mm-hmm. which also can set people up for homelessness. So I appreciate both y'all's definitions. And thank you for bringing up that aspect of it, Corissa, because I think our audience needs to know that.
Yes.
Just because you're a renter don't mean you got security. Man, that was good. So we talked a little bit about some of the initiatives that you all have going on right now at the NAACP. Is there 2 or 3 that you're really like, man, I'm so glad that we're championing this. I hope that we can really get this to come into fruition. I really want more community support around these initiatives. Like, is there 2 or 3 initiatives that you can talk a little bit more in depth about that you're really proud of, that you all are leading at the NAACP on the housing committee?
So really with the housing committee, we're really pushing for, like I told you in the beginning, we're looking for that Black wealth. We're looking to start putting out programming around that. So that's something that I'm really excited about, just because I feel like there's so many people in Minneapolis that don't experience the comfort of what it means to be homeowner and what that means to, live in the neighborhood for longevity and knowing that that is your place and you're building equity. So for me, that's one of our top priorities. The second thing is kind of like, again, that eviction moratorium. We're doing a collaboration with Urban League where we're looking to try to secure hotels, motels, and also some I'm having a brain freeze. We're trying to secure some lockers and things like that, just in case, because things are just being kicked down the can for so long. The can's being kicked down the street for so long. We don't know when and what will happen at that point. Mm-hmm. And we want to be prepared and have tools within our organizations to be able to give to our communities just in case something happens like that. And then really looking at, like I said, taking in issues that are happening in the community where people feel they're being discriminated against. So that's huge.
Yeah. And are you guys looking for that project into foreclosures and multifamily units, or not necessarily the units as you're still trying to structure it?
We're still structuring.
Okay.
We just, I just got appointed. So there's a lot of, my list is long. My list is long. It's a laundry list of things. But eventually we will, across the spectrum, again, from unhoused to homeowners, to be across that.
There's two things that I picked up on. The first thing is, it seems like the NAACP, the Housing Committee, you all have a multi-dimensional approach that you're trying to take to tackle the issue of building Black generational wealth, and also the issue with housing displacement, homelessness, renter insecurity, right? We'll just call it all of those things. And I value that. I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all approach to tackling this issue. It's a huge issue that must be addressed, but we have to have multiple different pathways to actually address the issue. It's not just going to be one solid thing. And the second thing is, I like that you all are very intentional about building that equity piece, right? And I really hope that you all don't lose sight of that. That's what it's about. The temporary solutions are fine. I think we need to have the temporary solutions, but what are we going to be doing long term to really set people in our community up for home ownership? That's the first one. We talked about it last week when we had our episode, when we talked about reparations. I believe that we can do reparations ourselves. I'm not a big fan of waiting on somebody else to swoop in with a cape and say, here you go, Black folks. Here's all the money that we owed you for years of enslavement, for the years of discrimination, for the years of abuse. Here goes a lump sum of money and opportunities all of a sudden. I don't believe that's going to happen. But I do believe that we have enough resources and talent inside of our own communities where we can make reparations happen for ourselves. So I really like that you all are being intentional in that approach that you're taking, and to try to build that Black wealth through real estate, through home ownership, because that's the first step. And this is coming from someone whose family owns multiple different properties. My father, we had a restaurant, and we had a food catering business. We do the hot dog carts and the food trucks, all that, for 10 years in the city of Minneapolis and in St. Paul. But now we're slowly transitioning into just doing real estate full time. We own various property, a variety of different properties, from single family to multi-family households. To also, we have a few duplexes as well in Duluth. So a lot of our properties are in Duluth, not in the Twin Cities, because it's just expensive, and you probably know that. But I know the significance of home ownership. I know the significance of building wealth that way, because then you can pass that down to your family. You can't pass down a rental agreement. Period.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, you just said it. That's the key right there, is to pass it down and generationally, leave something behind. Mm-hmm. Then we're also looking at, our brothers and sisters who are coming into reentry. They're coming from prisons and they're not able to even get a lease, right? So we have that aspect that we're looking at, as well as how can we look at restructuring that so that at least our brothers and sisters come in, they've done their time, or, they've paid back to the community, but then they're having the hardest time getting into housing. So that's another issue that we're tackling. It's also, like I said, the spectrum is large as far as youth, even in homelessness, one step at a time. But starting at the top is our priority right now, is really that Black wealth, that home ownership piece. And, as the committee grows, we'll be able to address more issues.
The fact that we even have to use the words youth and homelessness in the same sentence is just sickening to me. Like, how? And I'm hopefully I don't go off on a tangent, but like, where have we gotten to in society? Like, where are we at in society? Let's really take a second to think about this. Well, we can use the word youth and homelessness in the same sentence. Like, seriously, we got young folks out here, 16, 15, 14 years old, on the streets, literally on the streets. And we know once they get on those streets, it's hard to get them off, because more than likely the people that are supporting them are the drug dealers, are the gang bangers, are the people who don't have their best interest in mind, who are just trying to use their young body as a pawn in a much bigger scheme to what they have going on. And I work with young people, so I see this happening. And it just breaks my heart that we even have to use those two words in the same sentence. Like, where are we at as a society?
Absolutely. I mean, it's heartbreaking even to think that. But for me, I think I really focus on how we can make a difference and what we can do, really, how we can try to minimize that, or at least find solutions. If we wake up and think about the problem all the time, there's a saying that I heard, and it's, we've admired the problem long enough. And that's by Melody Hobson. And yeah, it's no longer, let's not admire the problem anymore. Let's look at solutions and what we can do across the base. Right now, I feel like we're in a fight. I feel like we're in a fight for the Black family. We're in the fight for the Black community. We're in the fight for everything Black. So whatever we can do to make a difference, it's our position to stand up and use our strengths for that.
And just to echo the words of our sister Leslie Redmond, who I admire, who I respect, and who I love, proud to just know her and the work that she does. Don't complain, activate. I think that campaign is just genius, because we can't sit around anymore and just complain about the problems. We have to activate ourselves and actively work towards finding some solutions to these issues. So shout out Leslie Redmond. I try to shout her out as much as I can on the show. Don't complain, activate, y'all.
Yeah, and hopefully we could contact Leslie and get her on. She's also a huge role model of mine too. The very first time I met her, I was like, wow, she is powerful, and the work she's been doing with the NAACP too has been tremendous. So definitely shout out to you. Don't complain, activate. Corissa. So before we close, I have two questions. Well, one of them is more of a comment. Now I know who I could contact when I'm looking for a beach house in Miami or something. So it's good to know that you're doing the real estate. We could see what type of beach houses or lake houses or whatever we could find. But,
Christian rolling in dough, y'all.
He is not.
He got the big money.
No, he does not. He only looks like big money. He does not have big money. I guarantee you. No, but really what I wanted to ask is like, what is something you want the community to know about you as a person? It could be related to your real estate. It could be related to anything you want them to know. Like, it could be experience about you as a parent, like whatever it is you feel the community should know. I want to give you the platform.
Wow, that is a wonderful thing. So, I'm such a selfless person. I feel like everything I've been through, everything I go through, I use that as a platform to help the next person who's walking through. So really what I would use this time for is just to give back to someone. So if you are, experiencing homelessness, or you're experiencing what you think is the worst time of your life, you will succeed. You will make through it. You will get through it. For me, it's all about empowering our community. It's about giving back. It's about using our hardships as a platform to be better and to be more, because as you survive those things, it just becomes wisdom for you down the road, and it's, helpful to someone else. So just me, I'm just a single mom who stood up and made a difference. I'm not anyone special in particular. I just used my voice, and I decided to make a difference, stand up.
Wow.
Wow, Corissa, and you're not just a single mom. You the single mom. You the change agent, right?
Absolutely.
You saw a problem and you sprung into action.
Yeah, some people think like, who am I? I'm no one, but actually you are someone. And you can use your voice or use your platform or use whatever it is that makes you to help someone else get through what they're going through.
Absolutely. And before we let you go, I don't have any more questions. Thank you for asking that last question. That was beautifully put, Christian, and you knocked it out the park. Corissa, where can people find more about your business and what you're doing with real estate? If they have any questions, if you're looking for more clients, people that you can assist through that process. And then also, how can people get involved with the NAACP and support your efforts on the housing committee? So I guess it's 3 parts to that.
Absolutely. So for the housing committee, we are looking for volunteers. We are completely volunteer based, but you can also become a member of the NAACP at the national level. So if you're willing to look at our Facebook page, Minneapolis NAACP, you can find our intake form to join the housing committee. We will be putting out a intake form for anyone that has any discrimination or housing issues. That'll be coming soon. If you're looking for me, I'm on Facebook at Corissa Sutton. Both my Corissa Shanem is my personal page, and then Corissa Sutton is my real estate page. And I'm also on Instagram. I am Corissa.
All right.
And then you can also find me at Powerhouse Mom as well. That's my empowerment
Powerhouse
platform.
Mom. Okay, we'll try to embed those links and that information into the video so people can find you very easily. It's not going to be a cumbersome process for them, because we want people to get connected with you, right? That's part of the reason why we have this platform, is to elevate the voices and the work that you all are doing out there in the community. So we'll definitely try to do some marketing and networking for you too over at the ADOS podcast.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for joining us, Corissa.
Yeah, this has been beautiful. And to your Instagram name, I am Corissa, that you are.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me on.
You're welcome.
Everyone, that was Corissa. We'll have the contact information posted in the links below, so you can check that out. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at the ADOS Podcast. We're on Facebook at the ADOS Podcast. We should get a Twitter. I don't think we have a Twitter. So I can't say we're at Twitter on the ADOS Podcast. We will be soon, though, now that I think about it. We have Instagram at the ADOS Podcast. You can also catch us on Spotify and on Apple Music, everybody. I'm your host, Elijah Norris Holiday.
And I'm Christian McClary. Thank you guys. Love you. And see you next week.
Peace.